Welcome back. Serious topic, right? Might have evoked some emotions and maybe some fear and some sadness. But, like my pastor friends have always told me back in the old days in North Carolina, if you want to have a Sunday resurrection in your life, you got to have a Friday crucifixion. So I'm going to crucify some things with you guys that I've had to crucify myself. But there's going to be some really good outcomes from this. I hope there was a helpful interaction for you. Let me tell you about one of my I don't want to hears is that somebody would say, well, yeah, he did a lot of good stuff and wrote some books, helped some people, trained some people. But, he really wasn't here. He was so busy in the doing, he wasn't really relating either physically or emotionally. Like he wasn't there as a dad or as a husband or as a good friend, or he wasn't there. When he was there, he was preoccupied or detached or disconnected. I really don't want that to happen. Well, why do you think first book I ever wrote was Hiding from Love? I was preaching to the choir there. I didn't want to be a person who was shut down, emotionally accessible. That would be really, really sad for me to think of on a legacy level of people that I care about. I don't want that to be part of my own eulogy. So, however it is, that's what we're going to be talking about today is leadership legacy and what it means. And how you can, wherever you are, I don't care if you're 24 and you're in TLP or if you're 84, that there are things that you can do. This is a structure that we have here that I came up with to help you sort of guide your life and your decisions so that there's just no regrets at the end of life. I studied a lot of longitudinal research about people's lives and what they do, and one of the studies that was done was very meaningful. It was about how people feel at the end stages of life, and there's kind of two groups. There are those people who are very grateful, and it hasn't been a perfect road, but it's been a good road. It's been meaningful, and I feel good about why God has me here and what's been done relationally and personally as well as achievement-wise. And then there are those people who are really, really regretful and bitter and sad, and who just do it all over again. Think Christmas Carol by Dickens. And so you don't want to be in that second category. And there's things that we can do that I'm going to take you through, takeaways to take you through, that it won't happen. All right? So let's get the material here. Key Bible passage, it's a great one. It's very inspirational for me. I spend a lot of time thinking about this and exegeting this and praying through it. Some of Jesus' final words in John 15:16 to his disciples, and that's us, right? You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear what? Fruit. Remember the tree? Bear fruit. Fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. That kind of says it all, is that you want to be a person that has fruit, and not just fruit like here, fruit that will last. And that's the legacy aspect that I want to get us into, is the word lasting. So let's talk about Roman numeral 1, the definition of leadership legacy. There's legacy in life, but I'm putting the word leadership legacy because we're a leadership coaching training program, right? And this has to do with you and the impact in your life. And the very simple description of this is fruit beyond your death. You want to have fruit that lasts beyond your death, that lasts beyond you. We all want to know that the planet is a better place after our, 90-year stay here. And you know what else? The name is irrelevant, guys. In other words, now some of you are going to have buildings, some of you that have been through TLP have buildings named after you, and I love that. I think that's great. And, I've got my name on mine. The T is the TLP. But to me, the real help is no matter how many generations all this goes, you want to make sure it's about the name is irrelevant, the impact. Impact is the fruit. What is it that's going to continue after I pass this mortal coil, that people's lives are better and their relationships are better and their businesses are better and their organizations are better, their churches are better? That's where you need to put the money. So I love it that some of you guys have buildings named after you. Keep it up. But the key here is the impact. Another piece here is I want you to get out of the what's called the sacred secular split. 3 S's, right? The sacred secular split. You need to get out of that. And that has to do with a lot of, especially I think business people or leadership people are kind of afflicted with this, where they see that, well, the things I've done for evangelism and paying for ministries and missions organizations I'm helping and this sort of thing, that's where the value of my legacy is. It's on bringing Christ directly through discipleship and poverty and developing countries and all this sort of thing. And the other stuff I did, I got this shoe company, and yeah, we were making $80 million a year, but it's just because it funds that. It's because I take the money out of my tithe and I fund these things. That's where the value is. The other just kind of way of making money. Not so, not so, not so. That's not how the Bible teaches it, which means that's not how God sees it. He doesn't see a higher value with your secular things you're doing, the money you're making, and the way you're making things work well for your company. And every time you spend time in organization and financials and marketing and sales, that is a spiritual or sacred activity. If you read How People Grow with me and Henry, we talk about the sacred-secular split. Don't get stuck in it. You know why? Because it's all spiritual. It is all spiritual. If you had a great breakfast this morning with your spouse and your kids, and you talked about, I don't know, sports or soccer or a movie you saw, that's spiritual because God made a spiritual universe. Might not have been religious, but it was spiritual. So don't go into I made the money and that was me just working not for the Lord. That was plan B. What really counts is how much I gave. No, it certainly does count for making the world a better place in so many ways, but it's also very spiritual legacy-wise. So don't go into that guilt thing that's unfortunately sometimes the churches have done to business people about, well, you know, you're just kind of that making money. Do the real thing. They're both the real thing. Yours is just as valid as anybody else. In the Bible, there's no sacred-secular split. I thought it'd be helpful to give you an illustration of somebody in my life that has left a legacy impact. And some of you guys know this story. But you've never heard of the guy, or if you have, send me an email, because I don't know anybody else besides a few friends of mine that have heard of him. His name is Roy Maas, M-A-A-S. Not like the moss on the tree, but Maas, A-A-S. And before I went to all my graduate stuff, I was working as a parent, not a child parent, a cottage parent in a children's home in Texas. And I was woefully unprepared and untrained for that. I was all of a sudden living as the father for 7 teenage boys, and I pray for those boys now. I hope their lives are better because I didn't know what I was doing at 23 years old. But my boss is a guy named Roy Maas, and great guy. He instructed me and helped me, and I didn't know anything about raising kids or foster care programs or cottage parents or residential anything. And he loved kids. And he dealt with the most screw-off kids, and he was hard on them and soft on them, and he knew just how to get responses out of them. And he had kids everybody had given up for, and they were going out to college and making great lives and this sort of thing. And he's the guy that you might remember in other stories I've told. He's the guy that when I was, we used to go to conferences to learn about child residential institutions because he was a big believer in learning, and so we would trundle down and get in the car and drive down to different, regional conferences, national conferences. And he's the guy that when we were walking around, one time he got really mad in this big hotel because hundreds of people running around talking about child welfare and stuff. And he goes, "Look at this! Isn't this sick?" And I said, "I don't know what's sick." And he goes, "See all these CEOs? They're all speakers, and they're speaking at their breakouts and they're speaking at their plenaries. But look at them. They're going to other workshops, and nobody has a notebook. They're not carrying a notebook." And I go, "Yeah?" And he goes, "That means they're not learning. They're doing their own dog and pony show. They're teaching their content, but they're not taking their little notebook to go to the other conference to learn something. Don't you ever be like that." And I remember it like it was yesterday. Even if you're speaking, leading, or whatever, you must always be on a continual learning curve. And I've dedicated my life to that, to continually learning. It's actually one of my core values. He was a friend to me. Who worked out together, had friends together, went to parties, and just a great guy. Had great spiritual talks, psychology talks, friendship talks, and this sort of thing. And then he passed away. And actually there's a statue erected to him in Texas for his work with kids. And he had I didn't think I'd feel that. He had a leadership legacy on me, and Roy, if you're listening, that will go on with you. And you don't even know who he is. And he didn't care about that. But that's what I mean. That's what that passage in John 15 means about fruit that will last. And you want to be one of those people. You want to be somebody else's Roy Moss, just like I was, or that I hope to be and aspire to be. So here's our interactive question. Who has an internal and leadership legacy in you? Who has an internal? What's the internal? The character piece. Responsibility, relationship, readiness, reality. Who has a legacy in character development? Who are you a better person internally about, but also who has a leadership legacy, who's made you a better person in your skills and your task and your competency? And you can't say God, and you can't say my parents, because that's way too easy. Remember in church, if the answer is Jesus 85% of the time, there's a problem there. Besides God and your parents, who has had a positive impact and legacy on your internal world and your leadership? It's going to be really a rich time for you, I bet. So I'll be right back.